The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, almost suffocating, as every person inside sensed something extraordinary was about to unfold. Cameras were rolling, spectators leaned forward, and even seasoned court officers felt uneasy. This was not an ordinary case. The defendant standing before the bench was the son of a powerful police chief, a name that carried influence, authority, and fear across the city. Across the room sat a veteran judge, known nationwide for his calm demeanor and unwavering commitment to justice, Judge Frank Capriari. No one expected the events that led here, and certainly no one expected what Judge Capriari was about to do next. Whispers filled the air as the charges were read aloud: assault, disrespect, abuse of power. The tension was undeniable. Everyone believed this case would end quietly, protected by connections. They were wrong, very wrong. The incident began weeks earlier, during what should have been a routine traffic stop. A decorated military veteran, now working as a court official, attempted to de-escalate a heated confrontation involving the police chief's son. Instead of compliance, the situation spiraled out of control. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and in a shocking moment captured on body cam footage, the young man lashed out violently. The veteran, clearly restrained and professional, was struck without warning. Bystanders froze, officers hesitated, and within minutes the footage spread like wildfire through internal channels. The problem was not just the assault, it was who committed it. The son of the city's top law enforcement officer. Many assumed the video would disappear, buried under influence and authority. But one thing stood in the way of that assumption: the law and the judge who refused to bend it. When the case reached Judge Capriari's courtroom, expectations were dangerously low. People believed privilege would triumph over accountability. The defendant stood confidently, almost casually, as if certain the outcome was already decided. His legal team seemed relaxed, even dismissive, signaling their belief that connections would soften consequences. The veteran sat quietly, his service medals absent, but his dignity intact. Judge Capriari watched closely, his eyes revealing nothing. Known for compassion but also unshakable principles, he listened as the defense attempted to downplay the assault as a misunderstanding, a moment of frustration, they called it. The courtroom stirred with discomfort. Judge Capriari leaned forward, asking questions that cut through rehearsed excuses. Each response from the defendant only deepened the judge's concern. Something was wrong, not just with the incident, but with the attitude behind it. As the body cam footage played on the courtroom screen, gasps echoed through the benches. The assault was clear, unprovoked, unjustified. The veteran's restraint contrasted sharply with the defendant's aggression. Judge Caprio watched every second without interruption. When the video ended, silence returned, heavier than before. The judge removed his glasses slowly, a gesture many recognized as a sign that something serious was coming. He addressed the defendant directly, not as a police chief's son, but as a citizen standing equal before the law. He asked about accountability, respect, and responsibility. The defendant's answers were evasive, rehearsed, and lacking remorse. That was the turning point. Judge Caprio's expression changed, not to anger, but to disappointment. And in that moment, everyone realized this case was no longer about influence, it was about justice. Judge Caprio began speaking, his voice calm but firm, carrying the weight of decades spent upholding fairness in the courtroom.
He reminded everyone that the law does not recognize family names, badges, or political power. It recognizes actions. He spoke about the veteran's service, the discipline required to show restraint under pressure, and the betrayal felt when authority is abused. His words were not dramatic, yet they struck harder than any gavel. The courtroom listened in absolute silence. Even the defendant seemed unsettled. Judge Caprio emphasized that privilege does not excuse violence, and entitlement does not replace accountability. He explained that true justice protects the vulnerable, not the powerful. With each sentence, the atmosphere shifted. What once felt like a routine proceeding now felt historic. The judge was setting an example, not just for the defendant, but for everyone watching. Then came the moment no one expected. Judge Caprio paused, looked directly at the defendant, and asked a simple question. Do you believe your position makes you untouchable? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The defendant hesitated, visibly shaken for the first time. His lawyer attempted to intervene, but the judge raised his hand, silencing the room. Judge Caprio explained that entitlement is one of the most dangerous threats to justice, especially tied to law enforcement. He made it clear that the badge represents responsibility, not immunity. The judge described how countless citizens place trust in the system every day, believing fairness still exists. Breaking that trust, he said, damages society more than any single crime. The defendant lowered his head. For the first time, reality seemed to set in. Judge Caprio then addressed the veteran directly, thanking him for his service, not only to the country, but to the values that define it. He spoke about restraint as a form of strength and dignity as a form of courage. The veteran nodded quietly, emotion visible but controlled. The judge acknowledged the pain of being assaulted by someone who believed rules did not apply to him. That recognition mattered. In that moment, the courtroom felt human again. Judge Caprio reminded everyone that justice is not revenge, it is accountability with purpose. He emphasized that consequences exist not to destroy lives, but to correct behavior and protect society. The defendant stood motionless, realizing this was not a performance for cameras. This was a lesson, delivered with clarity and conviction, one that would follow him long after he left the courtroom.
When it came time for the ruling, Judge Caprio took a deep breath and spoke slowly, ensuring every word was understood. He rejected the defense's request for leniency based on family status. He stated clearly that influence had no place in his courtroom. The sentence included accountability measures designed to force reflection, responsibility, and growth. Mandatory counseling, community service, a formal apology to the veteran, and most importantly, a permanent record acknowledging the assault. Gasps filled the room. This was not the outcome anyone had predicted. The defendant's confidence vanished instantly. Cameras captured every reaction. Judge Caprio explained that consequences must be meaningful to inspire change. He concluded by reminding the defendant that his actions would define him more than his last name ever could. The gavel struck, sealing a decision that would echo far beyond the courtroom walls. Outside the courtroom, reactions were immediate and intense. Supporters of the veteran expressed relief and gratitude, while critics of police privilege praised the ruling as a rare moment of true accountability. Social media exploded with clips and commentary, calling Judge Caprio's decision courageous, fair, and long overdue. Many viewers said the case restored their faith in the justice system. Others noted how rare it is to see power confronted without hesitation.
The police chief released a brief statement acknowledging the ruling and emphasizing that the law must apply equally to all. For the defendant, the weight of the decision had finally become real. The protection he assumed existed was gone, and for the public, this case became a symbol, proof that justice, when guided by integrity, can still prevail. Judge Caprio later reflected on the case in a quiet moment, stating that fairness requires courage, especially when pressure comes from powerful places. He explained that judges must serve the law, not public opinion or personal relationships. His words resonated deeply with legal professionals and everyday citizens alike. The case became a teaching example in law schools and ethics discussions, highlighting the importance of judicial independence. It reminded everyone that justice is not about punishment alone, but about restoring balance. The veteran returned to his life with dignity intact, knowing his experience had meaning beyond personal pain. The defendant began a difficult journey of accountability, forced to confront his actions without the shield of privilege. The courtroom, once silent, had spoken loudly. What made this case unforgettable was not just the verdict, but the message behind it. Judge Caprio demonstrated that compassion does not mean weakness, and firmness does not mean cruelty. He showed that justice can be both humane and uncompromising. Viewers around the world saw a judge who listened carefully, spoke honestly, and acted decisively. The case challenged assumptions about power and privilege, reminding everyone that respect must be earned, not inherited. It also highlighted the sacrifices made by veterans and the importance of honoring their service through fairness. The impact extended beyond headlines, influencing conversations about accountability in law enforcement families. This was not just a courtroom moment, it was a cultural one.
For many, this case reignited hope in a system often criticized for inequality. It showed that integrity still exists within institutions when individuals choose principle over convenience. Judge Caprio's decision became a benchmark, frequently referenced whenever discussions about favoritism arose. The public response proved that people crave fairness, not favoritism. They want leaders who uphold values even when it's uncomfortable. The veteran's quiet strength became a symbol of dignity under pressure. The defendant's fall from assumed immunity became a cautionary tale. Together, their stories intersected in a moment that defined justice not as an abstract idea, but as a living, breathing responsibility. The ripple effects of the ruling continued for months. Internal police policies were reviewed. Training sessions emphasized accountability regardless of rank or family ties. The case was cited as evidence that transparency matters. Judge Caprio received letters from across the country thanking him for reminding people what justice should look like. He responded simply, stating he did his job. That humility only strengthened public respect. The courtroom returned to routine cases, but the memory of that day lingered. Everyone who witnessed it understood they had seen something rare, a moment when the law stood taller than influence. That is why the story continues to resonate. At its core, this case was not about punishment, it was about responsibility. It proved that actions have consequences, no matter who you are or where you come from. Judge Caprio's response shocked everyone, not because it was harsh, but because it was fair. In a world where justice often feels selective, fairness becomes revolutionary.
The veteran walked away with acknowledgement and respect. The defendant walked away with a lesson that money and power could not erase. And the public walked away reminded that justice, when protected, still works. That realization is powerful. That realization is rare. This courtroom story stands as a reminder that justice is only as strong as the people who uphold it. Judge Caprio did not seek applause or attention. He sought fairness, and in doing so, he delivered a ruling that shocked everyone, not with drama, but with truth. It challenged privilege, honored service, and restored faith. Stories like this matter because they show what's possible when integrity leads. If justice can stand firm in one courtroom, it can stand anywhere. And that is why this moment will never be forgotten, because it proved that the law, when guided by courage, still speaks louder than power.
Disclaimer: this video was a dramatized courtroom narration created for educational and entertainment purposes only. While inspired by real-world legal principles and public courtroom conduct, characters, dialogue, and events may be fictionalized or adapted to convey moral and legal lessons. This content does not constitute legal advice, nor does it intend to defame or misrepresent any individual or organization. Viewer discretion is advised.